Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today is a cold day in hell. A blizzard has sort of sparked because I'm actually going to be agreeing and taking Nintendo's side today. Now, normally you guys might be like, whoa, the guy that always has an issue with the big gaming companies when it comes to emulation and stuff like that. No, today I'm going to be talking about a pretty bad actor and some misinformation that I saw floating around that got me pretty sparked up to cover it in a video. Now, it was a few days ago, I saw this one post where people were saying, oh my god, there's a new Nintendo lawsuit, not related to Palworld. They now claim that they can sue people just for playing Switch games in an emulator. It doesn't matter where you got them. So they showed this one pager out of this lawsuit. Count 3, circumvention of technological measures in violation of 17 USC. So again, we'll read through this. It's kind of dry and technical, but I'm going to try to use this to make some sense. Plaintiff repeats and realleges every allegation contained in paragraph 1 and 94 is fully set wherein. So section 1201, of the Copyright Act, in a general sense, prohibits circumvention of a technological measure that effectively controls access to a work protected by the Copyright Act. Now, a lot of those emulators for Nintendo Switch games that have been going down, like Yuzu and very lately Ryujinx, a lot of those emulators utilize keys that come from actual Nintendo Switches. Now, the only way to get those keys is to violate technological protection measures. So Nintendo's not so much going after emulation, but they're kind of going after people going for the BIOS files, those firmware files that we need to actually emulate stuff. Now, some could argue that maybe Nintendo has a case, but for them to set this precedent, it actually impacts a lot of emulators, okay? It's not just Nintendo. You want to play Bloodborne on the PlayStation 4 emulator, from my understanding and from my experience, you need to grab, files off of a hacked PlayStation 4. So technically, you're circumventing measures. For, any real emulator like the PlayStation 2, you're gonna have to get a BIOS, and maybe you can get that from an official PlayStation 2, but you guessed it, you're circumventing technological measures. So it's a weird thing where we're not really hitting the emulators, but we're hitting the necessary components that users should grab from actual hardware instead. And that can basically be as crippling as actually going after the emulator in of itself. So what they said was Nintendo's technological measures effectively control access, yada yada. The defendant at a minimum loaded unauthorized copies of the games into Ryujinx, Yuzu, or any emulator and streamed them. Each of those steps requires circumvention of one or more technological measures. The defendant circumvented Nintendo's game encryption for each game he played on an emulator. So each act constitutes a violation for which plaintiff is entitled to damages under 17 USC and injunctive relief. Defendant and his agents' acts are willful, intentional, purposeful, and disregarding of the plaintiff. So what they're going after is, again, line number 98, okay? This specific, exact mention, where in order to run the games under the emulator, you basically are admitting to violating those technological protection measures. Now, the thing about it is this lawsuit is actually part of a much larger lawsuit, a fucking 47-pager, that actually has me siding with Nintendo against what I believe is one of the worst bad actors when it comes to game preservation, well, not really game preservation, but game emulation, which I am very passionate about. I am a very big defendant of, okay? I emulate my games. And look, compared to whatever retro gaming channel you watched online that's a purist with actual hardware, you are not going to be rejected by God's kingdom if you decide to fucking emulate a game, okay? Jesus ain't gonna tell you you're a bad guy, okay? No one's really gonna bother about it. But the understand, there's a fine line between emulation and then emulating for the sake of piracy. Now, the Nintendo Switch is probably one of the most pirated gaming systems out of all the other competitors it has. The PlayStation 5, from my understanding, doesn't really have piracy. The Xbox systems do not have piracy, as those systems aren't even cracked at all at the moment. But Nintendo Switch has effectively had an emulation scene that has lasted for about several years at this point, and effectively most, if not the entire Nintendo Switch library, runs pretty well under an emulator. So the thing about it is obviously for me, I emulate a lot of my Switch games. But instead of pirating, I also purchase a copy of those games. So for instance, Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. I really enjoy this game. I bought it at the store, backed it up using a hacked Nintendo Switch, and then ran it in an emulator on my PC, upping the resolution, and running it on my Steam Deck and cross-saving the files between them, meaning that I can play a bit of this game on the go, and then it instantly syncs back to my PC so I can play it here and there with all those enhanced benefits that Nintendo does not provide. Then, of course, obviously, Metroid Dread, great game, amazing under an emulator, actually works great on a Steam Deck. Games like Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, great RPG, absolutely, didn't even play it until like it actually came out on Switch properly. Runs really great in an emulator. Now the thing is, I bought these games, all right? So I decided to back up my copy and actually run them in an emulator. So in my mind, in my opinion, I don't believe this is, malicious piracy in any regard. But what this person was doing that Nintendo's going up against was actually downloading pirated copies and streaming them weeks in fucking advance. Now, obviously with emulators, I kind of want to touch upon, again, the Bleem case again. Now, Bleem was a pretty popular emulator that allowed you to run PlayStation 1 games on your PC. So to give you an idea, these people went through so many lawsuits where ultimately, even if Sony didn't win, because they were such a small company, Sony effectively bankrupted these people because of the massive legal fees put towards them. But if you look at their website, these guys were basically selling a piece of software that could run PlayStation games on their system. And they pretty much said works with 300 games, get PC quality graphics so you can play at higher resolutions, works with PlayStation and Dex drive saves, free compatibility updates, yada yada. Obviously, if you're Sony and you look at something like this, you think, wow, fuck me. These guys are going to let these people play our games on hardware that isn't sold by us? Get out of here. But not only that, they were also selling this for like the Dreamcast, which this product allowed you to play PlayStation 1 games on the Dreamcast. Now I want to remind you, this is kind of like if somebody released a piece of software on the Xbox Series X and said, with this one game, you can run, pirated versions or ISO files of your PS5 games. Like just assume for a minute, you could run PlayStation 5 games on an Xbox, and they were just selling that. If you think Sony wouldn't jump in for a heavy-ass lawsuit against them on that, you would absolutely be out of your mind. So yeah, this is clearly something that would piss off a lot of larger companies. Now, I don't think that Nintendo really cares if you play Link to the Past on Super Nintendo on an emulator, but I do think they care if you're showcasing gameplay footage for games they haven't released yet. Now, if you go back to this lawsuit over here, we're going to look through some highlights. What they said was defendant Jesse is an individual who streams pirated games on several online platforms. Platforms like Discord, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Trovo, Kick, Vaughn, DLive, Picarto, Nemo, every single platform. And the username they used was EveryGameGuru or EveryGameGuru3. Now, one of the actual accounts I pulled up, EveryGameGuru3, recently streamed Mario & Luigi Brothership, so I don't even know if that's really out. I think it is. Early release first look, episode 3. So with a peak viewership of 14, you might be like, was it really worth getting fucking ass rammed by Nintendo's legal? Probably not, okay? But the ninjas do not care what your viewership is. The ninjas do care if you're showcasing their games before they're even released, especially if they're also running off a fucking emulator. So what they said was, defendant is a recidivist pirate who has obtained and streamed Nintendo's leaked games on multiple occasions. So the way that games get leaked for Nintendo is usually somewhere in the distribution chain, a physical copy is grabbed, and somebody takes a physical copy of, let's say, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. It's not released yet. Somebody who works in distribution grabbed it off of the shelf, illegally, by the way. They then used a hack switch to take the game cartridge, put it in an actual Switch, you dump the actual game cart and then post it online on 4chan or like any of these, torrent pirate websites. And then somebody downloads them and runs them in an emulator. It's been happening for years. It's been happening even long before, Link to, I think it was Tears of the Kingdom came out. I mean, people were streaming Pokemon games like a week or two ahead of time. It was insane. So what they had basically also came out into saying is, as early as 2022, defendant streamed unauthorized gameplay of at least 10 of Nintendo's leaked games. And more than 50 times in total, Nintendo submitted dozens of takedown notices pursuant to Section 512 of the Copyright Act to have those streams released, okay? I mean, they went down and shut down multiple channels as much as they could. So Nintendo at this point had to actually slap this person's cock completely out because they just kept streaming their fucking games. So here they also talk about, again, the concept of those technological measures. So again, they talk about the encryption that scrambles the audiovisual content in the game file to make it unreadable without the use of proprietary cryptographic keys. commonly referred to in the emulator scene as prod.keys. So again, if you're getting these cryptographic keys, Nintendo considers that to be very unlawful. So here's the other level of stupidity that just keeps escalating. So according to Nintendo, Defendant recently boasted online that he wants to help anyone and everyone who wants to get Nintendo games for free and early, or who needs help installing and setting up Nintendo Switch emulators that let you play Nintendo Switch games for free. Now, I've seen some people kind of equate this. What about channels like Mr. Sujano or, Linus Tech Tips, or, channels that have shown, I've shown how to set up emulators from time to time. There's a big difference between showing people how to set up an emulator, and then there's a big difference between telling people, hey guys, let me show you how to get games for free. Games that aren't even released yet, okay? Big difference. This guy is the bad actor. I feel like it's a government plant to cause emulation to look worse than it really is. Because at the end of the day, if you're emulating for piracy, then you're a bad apple. Now, I personally emulate older games or games that I just want to see upscale. Like a lot of PS2 stuff, I want to run at 60 frames or something at like 1080p or 4K. I think that's fine. Those games aren't even being sold. Like I said, I don't think Nintendo gives a shit if you play things like Twilight Princess. They're not selling it as long as you're not distributing the game illegally. I don't think they care if you run it in Dolphin for the extra frames. And there's a lot of people that use emulators to do things like crazy randomizer runs on the internet, okay? Like this stuff only exists because of emulator technology. And again, Nintendo doesn't really care about this. They're not distributing video games or sharing them, in any way that would cause Nintendo financial harm. So, okay, anyways, to go down over here, what they get into is actually screenshots of their illegal activities. Now, the reason why it takes any legal company some time to actually do this is that they're actually building stuff up. So this guy's streams ended up showcasing, hey guys, here's the early release right here. Every Game Guru showcasing Mario and Luigi. Now, again, for 14 viewers, was it worth it? I'm not sure. But again, when you look down to his YouTube channel, it's kind of hard to tell, but he's sitting at like 60 subscribers. And some of these channels, they keep going up and down. So again, it's serial recidivism in this nonsense. So yeah, Nintendo was screenshotting everything, and at one point he even came out and was like, I have 1,000 burner channels, allegedly, okay? We can do this all day. So not only is this guy just streaming the games, but he's trying to pick fights with fucking Japan's most insane entertainment legal team out there. So even on Kick, they're looking at like him streaming Super Mario Party Jamboree to like a total of one person, all right? It doesn't even matter how, it could be 1 or 1 million viewers. Nintendo Legal is gonna fuck you in the ass the same way. So every Game Guru right here, all right, with his like face just plastered over, like this guy not only stuck his face in the corner, okay, whatever popularity he was gonna get, this guy is the absolute definition of complete brain damage when operating in this pirate video game space. So here's the even wilder part. Obviously, you might be like, Muda, how did they even figure out this guy was like fucking streaming like Nintendo games? How did they know this guy was actually emulating them? Well, at some point, Nintendo decided to go down and actually look at various little things. For instance, he had this Mango Hunt prompt, or not Mango Hunt, I think this is like a Riva Tuner, where they were able to see like Vulkan, CPU, GPU, like they were able to pull out like obviously PC reporting statistics for these games being emulated. They were also able to look at portions of this guy's like actual like stream and find out at the very bottom there was like Ryujinx or Ryuzu's Ryujinx or Yuzu's status bar for emulation. So again, this guy wasn't even smart enough to hide this in any capacity. Not only that, Nintendo even went into the Discords and found that, yeah, this guy was just showing people sites to go and download 3DS games entirely for free. Like, dude, you can't be this stupid when operating in this space, okay? You know, people like to dog on Nintendo, and trust me, I like to kick Nintendo in the balls if I can, but let's just be honest where things are. Nintendo is 100% on the right here, and guys like this actually make the entire community look like scumbags in the process. Was every Game Guru, first you grab an emulator, last version of the paid, like this guy's already distributing paid versions of the emulator, like shit. Grab the latest firmware update. So he's distributing the fucking cryptographic keys right there. Literally links to download the game. Love y'all. Capitalism is cancer. My channel is being deleted for sharing gameplay videos. This is your reward. I mean, you know, at some point, I think a lawyer can argue mental insanity is at play because you can't be this stupid. You can't actually be this fucking stupid operating like this. But yeah, Nintendo finally had a reason to go after this guy, and eventually enough is enough, okay? One DMCA strike is whatever. Two DMCA strikes is, all right, you're kind of pushing it. When Nintendo is going after you with this level of litigation, you are a complete dipshit. So what does Nintendo want out of this? Well, let's read Nintendo's prayer of relief, okay? Amen, buckos. So first off, they want to include a permanent injunction prohibiting the defendant and his attorneys and all third parties in active concert or participation with any of them from A, publicly performing Nintendo's copyrighted games via streaming or encouraging or facilitating any other individual to violate Nintendo's exclusive rights to publicly perform its work. B, otherwise infringing or causing, enabling, facilitating, encouraging, promoting, or inducing, or participating in the infringement of any of Nintendo's works protected by the Copyright Act. And C, offering to the public, providing, or otherwise trafficking in Yuzu, Ryujing, Suyu, Sudachi, or other emulators, the cryptographic keys, or any circumvention devices. Now, the thing about it is, obviously, it's kind of okay to be, like, understanding that Nintendo is going after this guy. Like, you understand why they've done it, but the precedent this could set is pretty dangerous. Because here's the thing, imagine if this guy gets taken down and now streaming Nintendo games through emulation is suddenly not okay. Look, even if you're so anti-emulation, right, and you're so deep in Nintendo's fucking cock, you have to understand that there's plenty of content creators that do this in a very positive, very safe, and very, like, you know, respectful manner. There's a lot of those people that do randomizer runs, speed runners, right? There's a lot of people that just play video games and stream them because as content creators, maybe they don't have access to aging hardware or even capture cards. Like, especially for a lot of entry content creators, it's important. Look, when I was starting YouTube, half of the gameplay footage for Haunted Gaming, dude, almost every single... Until GTA 5 released, all right, that specific time, everything I ever did on my channel was luckily captured through emulation content, right? Like emulators that I would run on the crap top and record using Bandicam. Like, this is insane levels of, like, understanding that, yes, some people use this stuff for, again, legitimately reasonable reasons, right? There's people that do emulate without the intention of piracy. Nintendo, unfortunately, had gone after, and I mean fortunately in their case, because this guy is a scumbag. Unfortunately for the community, this scumbag can possibly ruin emulation for everyone. You know, a lawsuit like this could eventually make it where, again, streaming these games or showcasing footage of them would be wrong. And maybe if down the road Nintendo considers that anybody that is violating their technological measures, right, even if you're not streaming something, that's the route I'm worried, because most people obviously aren't content creators in the emulation space. But if it ever becomes a fact or a legal issue where, again, just emulating something that requires you to have a BIOS file or a cryptographic key, which a lot of emulators do, that is incredibly dangerous across the board. See, it's not the emulators that are, you know, legally the issue. It's the BIOS files, it's the firmware stuff. And that impacts a lot more than Nintendo. So yeah, it's something to worry about a little bit. And while I am on Nintendo's side against this piece of shit, I am a little bit worried about the preservation of emulators going forward. But ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it, I am out.